Honestly, this game is like an 8 out of 10. And this is really the first Hoyo game that I've ever enjoyed. I think Genshin is boring as hell, and I think HSR has a terrible new player experience. But I say this with no disrespect, no shade, whatever. But it is incredibly obvious that a majority of you have never touched a traditional gacha game. And I've come to the conclusion that if you compare this game to one of the quote-unquote big three, you're doing yourself and this game a massive disservice. So I finally re-rolled an account with the God Seed, apparently, and this was my 11th account that I played through Chapter 1 at the minimum, and I want to give an actual review of the game rather than the majority of what I'm seeing, which are first impressions disguised as a review. And I just want to emphasize the fact that there's zero things wrong with first impressions, but there are differences between first impressions and a review. And since I've played, this is my 11th account that I've at least played through Chapter 1. One of the other accounts is level 20. The rest are anywhere between 15 and 18, so like on an average level 17. On 10 other accounts, I feel like I can give an accurate review of the game. So like I said at the beginning, it's obvious that a lot of players in gacha now have not played gacha games in the traditional sense of the genre. I'm glad that Genshin was able to appeal to such a broad audience and bring so many people into the genre, because it is a fun genre. I've been playing gacha games for a decade now in the traditional sense. By a traditional gacha, I mean you can only play it on your computer if you download BlueStacks or something. Before I go into this, I just want to point out and say, whoever decided that the medium that they tell the story through be these fucking TVs should be fired and blacklisted from every current game studio and future created game studio going forward. I do think that, and I'll get into that in a second. But I just want to remind you that they themselves, that this will be a more casual gacha or something to that effect. Right? You know, I went into this also comparing it to Wuthering Waves, because out of the quote-unquote big three, that's the only one I really played. I've played it literally every day since launch. And I was massively disappointed, because I like everybody, I was comparing it to that, and I thought, why would I ever play this when I can just play that? It's superior. Excuse me for butting in, editor here, but isn't the ending screen sick?
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
However, while I was re-rolling, eventually I said, I want to lay down. I'll start downloading this on my phone now, before. And you know, in order to do that, you have to literally delete everything but the operating system off your phone. So it gave me a chance to see all the other gacha games I had on there. And when I started putting it into that context of just a casual mobile gacha game, it started to make a lot more sense with the direction that they took with this game. This feels like, or literally is, if you want to put it in that context, this literally is what would happen if a billion-dollar company wanted to put a more modern take on the traditional gacha. That is what this is. And they execute it very well. Besides the fucking TVs in Chapter 1. Chapter 2, it gets, you know, it does get better. They did say it would get better, and it does. But one thing I want to point out that kind of lends me to this conclusion of being just a modern take on a traditional gacha is the overworld, or what people are referring to as the overworld. I don't... This isn't an overworld. Do you want to know what this really is? It's a middle ground between a home screen and the open world. That's what it is. They want you to have the experience of being in an open world, but the function of a home screen. And you can tell this because everything is literally right next to each other. Everything that you would ever need is on this street, right? You have your city quests right next to your daily scratch off thing, right next to the food, right next to the daily energy recharge, right next to the arcade, right next to the main building. This is further backed up by the fact that you don't have to walk anywhere. You have this map that you can just teleport to anything you need to go to. You barely have to interact with this overworld or whatever. So it's like what I said, it's a more modern approach to a home screen. So I think it's wrong in a sense to compare it to the open worldness of Genshin and HSR and Wuthering Waves. They wanted to evolve that aspect of gacha games, and I think they executed it fairly well right here. Another thing that lends me into the direction of this should be compared more to a traditional gacha than the big three or whatever is the combat. Okay, because if you look at a lot of other gachas, besides maybe like Fate or whatever, because you're just clicking 3 cards. But even then, so you can just click 3 cards, or you can build a team where you're looping ultimates over and over again. So they have the giga casual aspect where you're just clicking buttons, or in some games like Azure Lane, you literally don't have to do anything. You just you click start and the game plays it for you. But you have the casual combat. But if you actually like dive into, and specifically in this example, the stun, I'm just gonna call it a class, the stun class, and how it's supposed to function on your team, it can get a lot more in depth. And I think that's like, once you really understand how you're supposed to maximize the stagger you do as quickly as possible, so you can start going into these combos and swapping and building your character for specifically doing as much of this impact damage as possible, the combat starts to get a lot more enjoyable. But in the same breath, you can just face roll click the screen. And I think that's what makes it a casual gacha game. Because if I can beat the content on my phone while I'm focusing on a TV show, then they executed it well and it's a casual gacha game. I do hope in the future though they like double down on these classes, and specifically like the stagger mechanic. It does have the bones to be a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a casual experience. Now, I'm going to talk about the dailies real quick that also point me to the conclusion that we shouldn't be comparing it to Wuthering Waves, blah, blah, blah. At level 30, you unlock this, which is a custom daily. Now, if you haven't noticed, as you fight and defeat enemies, you've been unlocking these cards, and each one of these cards has a set range of materials they drop. So like this guy, he drops 2 to 3 of the second level of a ascension material and 4 to 5 of the first. You can set up to 5 of any combination of cards you want in your daily. In the famous based words, that is the definition of a game
that respects your time
and meant to be played casually. And I don't think there's any room to disagree with that. The fact that you can unlock the enemies that you put into your own Build-A-Bear daily, and I think it fits the overall theme of the game very well. I want to say, I think whoever was in charge of designing the parry indicators and sound, they must have been blocked from communicating with the effects design team or whatever, because 1, it is hard to hear sometimes, and 2, sometimes you can't see it because there's so much visual clutter on your screen. And I don't know if they mentioned it in the game, but there's 2 different indicators. It might have been mentioned in the story somewhere. I skipped most of it, except in chapter 2. I think chapter 2 is pretty enjoyable. Honestly, I thought it was kind of funny. Back to the art and design, I think just like most people, the art design is great. The design choices they made are great. The model rigging and animations are fantastic. They even do like the little nuanced moves with their fingers and their facial expressions, which they execute really well on. I also think that objectively, the comic book medium for their storytelling is very well designed and made. Now, that does not mean you have to like it, but it fits very well. It flows very smoothly. It works for the aesthetic of the game, and the art looks great. So I think the comic book storytelling medium was great. Lastly, before I talk about some unfortunates or some negatives, I'll just touch on the bang boos. They're just like they're just cute little dressed up dumbasses who roll around and blabble and fucking, I don't know, they're just cute. They're just a cute little guy. And they're really well designed. I think the system is cool, and it's cool when you can swap into them, and it's pretty funny when you see them run up to the boss off the side of your screen, start attacking. It makes me giggle or chortle or exhale every time. honestly. Now, with the TVs, it honestly feels like the TVs were designed for the roguelite or the dungeon crawler mode first, because it fits that mode almost perfectly. You're going through different levels, you're picking up little things. That it's a dungeon crawler and it fits perfectly in that mode. For some reason they decided to make that the main medium that you play through the story, which wouldn't be so bad if the characters didn't fucking yap so much while you're in it. There's a speed up button, that's great, but it doesn't speed up the dialogue, and while they're talking, you can't move, and that's what makes it so slow. That's why it feels so fucking bad. And I say this because I played through the first chapter 11 times. If you could move while they were talking, you would cut your time in the TVs by almost 50%. Really, you would spend half as much time in the TVs if you could move while they were fucking yapping their ass off. And also, I feel like it works fine in the exploration mode. It's fine there. It's fine there. It does get better in chapter 2. I feel like there was more person-to-person story and fighting bosses and stuff. In the future, I hope they figure out some way to transition away from the TVs, or at least at the bare minimum, if I have the 2x on or the speed up on, speed up the fucking dialogue or let me move while you're talking, because we went over this already. You told me how to move the block the last time I was in the fucking TVs. You don't need to tell me how to move the block again. I don't need to know how to move the block every fucking time I go into the fucking TVs. Anyways, another thing is, I'm just not a huge fan of character banners and weapon banners. I mean, gacha games are already predatory. I got this off the standard banner, by the way. Gacha games are already predatory, and this just doubles down on that. So that will always be a negative to me, because every gacha game I've played for the past decade does not have a weapon banner. With that being said, these little balls, these nuts do look fucking, I mean, they're well designed. I think they look pretty fucking cool, honestly. Like this, like that's fucking cute. It's fucking Reptar. There is one that I do not like though. What the fuck is this? You didn't need to put the fucking butthole on here. We have rabbit buttholes and cat nuts, but the nuts on that cat were massive too. All in all, it's a good game. It shouldn't be compared to the big open world glorified RPG games, because they said it themselves. It's supposed to be casual, and you know what? It fits right in with that. And I think they do a great job at modernizing that experience. That's the best way I can put it. I think they do a great job at modernizing the experience you get when you play a casual gacha. And the soundtrack is fantastic. Anyways, I was just getting annoyed seeing all these barely played reviews, and there you go.